The earliest design, Plain Crazy, 1928. Mickey Mouse's earliest incarnation was first seen in the silent short Plain Crazy, produced in early 1928, but not released to the public until after other shorts. In this version, Mickey's design was still experimental and crude. He already wore the familiar shorts that would become his most consistent trademark, but he lacked both shoes and gloves, leaving his form bare and somewhat unfinished. His eyes were the most striking feature, large, circular, and filled entirely with solid black pupils. The result was less endearing and more eerie, giving him a slightly unsettling expression by modern standards. This primitive design reflected both the technical and financial constraints facing Walt Disney and Ub Iwerks at the time. The short was independently produced, with limited resources and tight deadlines, and so the animation relied on simple, exaggerated forms that could be drawn quickly. Personality-wise, Mickey in this stage was mischievous, reckless, and at times even mean-spirited. In Plain Crazy, he pulls pranks and misbehaves without much regard for others, painting him as more of a trickster than a hero. While this early version was a far cry from the wholesome character later associated with Disney, it laid the groundwork for what was to come. The transitional phase, The Gallopin' Gaucho, 1928. The second Mickey short produced, The Gallopin' Gaucho, represents a fascinating turning point in his development. In the opening scenes, Mickey still looks much like he did in Plain Crazy: round eyes, no gloves, and loose proportions. However, partway through the short, his design unexpectedly shifts, making it the only time Mickey evolves visibly within a single cartoon. His eyes become simplified, his features are more compact, and his outline more controlled. This redesign coincides with a significant moment in Mickey's character arc. The Gallopin' Gaucho also introduces Pete as Mickey's recurring rival. To contrast Mickey against this new antagonist, the animators subtly transformed him from a chaotic troublemaker into a more heroic and sympathetic lead. The design changes and the narrative changes worked together. His slightly refined look matched his new role as an underdog hero who could be cheered for rather than laughed at. Scholars of animation often point to this short as the symbolic moment where Mickey began his transformation into the cultural icon he would become. Establishing the icon, Steamboat Willie, 1928. The third Mickey short produced, Steamboat Willie, premiered on November 18, 1928, and became his official introduction to audiences worldwide. It marked not only a major leap forward in Mickey's design, but also in animation history itself. In this cartoon, Mickey now appears with shoes, smaller and simplified eyes, black ovals instead of oversized circles, and a more balanced head-to-body proportion. These refinements made him look cuter, friendlier, and more approachable, moving him away from the strange and slightly unnerving qualities of the Plain Crazy design. Even more importantly, Steamboat Willie was the first cartoon to successfully synchronize sound with animation. Mickey's whistling, movements, and playful antics were tied to a musical score, creating an entirely new form of entertainment. His personality shifted as well. While he still displayed a mischievous streak, his behavior felt more playful than cruel. He was transformed into a character audiences could admire rather than fear. This short became a sensation, cementing Mickey as the studio's leading star and establishing the visual template that would guide his design for years to come. Completing the look, The Opry House, 1929. By 1929, Mickey's design was beginning to settle into something more recognizable, but one crucial element was still missing. In the short The Opry House, the fifth Mickey cartoon to be released, he finally acquired his signature gloves. The addition of gloves might seem small, but it was transformative. Previously, Mickey's hands, drawn in the same black tone as his body, often blended together on screen, making it difficult for audiences to distinguish them during quick movements. The white gloves created visual contrast, making his gestures clearer and more readable in motion. There was also a symbolic element to the gloves. Walt Disney himself explained that they made Mickey appear more human, emphasizing his anthropomorphized nature. They helped reinforce his role as a performer and entertainer, someone audiences could project onto and relate to. With gloves, shorts, shoes, and simplified facial features, Mickey's design was now cohesive. While still evolving, this version became the baseline from which all future variations would emerge. Pie-Eyed Mickey, the Carnival Kid, 1929. Later that same year, in The Carnival Kid, Mickey underwent another subtle yet important transformation. For the first time, his eyes featured a small triangular slice of white space, creating what became known as the pie-eye design. This style was common in late 1920s and early 1930s cartoons as a way to suggest light reflection, since animation technology of the era could not easily convey realistic highlights. The pie-shaped detail gave Mickey's eyes more life and expressiveness, allowing him to convey emotions with greater clarity. The Carnival Kid also marked a major milestone in character development. Mickey spoke his first words on screen. Hot dog! Hot dog! Voiced by Walt Disney himself. The addition of voice gave him a stronger identity and expanded his range of expression beyond physical comedy. During this period, Mickey's eyebrows were also introduced in some shorts, though they appeared inconsistently and often disappeared just as quickly. Despite these fluctuations, the pie-eye look became his defining feature throughout the next decade, appearing in countless shorts and in the widely distributed daily Peanuts-style comic strips that ran until the late 1930s. The leap to color, the band concert, 1935. A major breakthrough in Mickey's evolution came with his first appearance in full color in the band concert, 1935, his 76th short. For audiences, seeing Mickey in vibrant hues for the first time was a revelation. His red shorts, yellow shoes, and white gloves became firmly associated with his identity. In this particular cartoon, Mickey wore a bandleader's uniform, but the introduction of color allowed animators to enrich his personality visually. Shortly afterward, in Mickey's Garden, also 1935, he appeared in his standard outfit for the first time in color. Here, another subtle but lasting adjustment was made. The buttons on his shorts changed from circular to oval, a detail that has remained ever since. Around this period, Mickey's face also transitioned from plain white to a more natural pinkish flesh tone, further humanizing him. At the same time, his gloves, which had previously been depicted in yellow, were standardized to plain white. These combined changes gave Mickey a polished, modernized appearance. Color animation also opened new doors for storytelling, and Mickey's design had to keep pace. The brighter palette and cleaner outlines allowed animators to highlight his personality shifts. He was less of a prankster now and more of a cheerful leader, someone audiences could look up to as a role model. Pear-shaped body. In 1936, Mickey underwent one of his most revolutionary design changes. Animators introduced an asymmetrical, pear-shaped body, moving away from the earlier circular form. This shift was not merely cosmetic, it dramatically altered how Mickey could move on screen. The new shape allowed animators to apply the squash and stretch technique, a principle of animation that exaggerates weight and flexibility. With this method, Mickey could bend, bounce, and react in ways that felt more lifelike and dynamic. This redesign gave Mickey a greater sense of realism. Instead of moving stiffly, he now appeared to follow the laws of gravity. Animators could draw him in poses that conveyed personality and emotion, expanding his expressive range. The pear-shaped body also supported more complex storylines, since Mickey could now serve as both a comedic figure and a believable character in dramatic moments. This was one of the most significant advancements in his entire history of evolution. Fred Moore redesign. By the late 1930s, animator Fred Moore, known as Disney's Mickey specialist, suggested that the character needed further modernization. Moore's redesign retained the pear-shaped body, but added a larger, more expressive head and reintroduced white eyes with black pupils instead of the pie-eye design. This gave Mickey a more natural, human-like appearance while still maintaining his cartoon charm. The change debuted in the short Mickey Surprise Party, 1939, and was quickly accepted as the standard. This version of Mickey looked cuter and more appealing, making him more attractive to audiences who were now accustomed to polished animation from Disney's feature films. Moore's design emphasized charm and relatability, ensuring Mickey could serve as a global icon. Though subtle, this was a critical turning point that set the template for his modern look. Fantasia breakthrough. Mickey's redesign by Fred Moore was immortalized in Fantasia, 1940, specifically in the segment The Sorcerer's Apprentice. This short within a feature film became one of the most famous portrayals of Mickey Mouse ever produced. Here, the new design reached its full potential. His proportions were refined, his eyes were more expressive, and his body language conveyed a broad range of emotions. The Sorcerer's Apprentice also elevated Mickey's status. No longer just a comic short subject, he was now the lead in a highly ambitious artistic project. Audiences fell in love with this version of Mickey, and the design quickly became the studio standard. Although Fantasia was not a box office success upon release, its impact on Mickey's identity was permanent. To this day, the image of Mickey in the sorcerer's robes remains one of the most iconic depictions of the character, symbolizing both his evolution and his timeless appeal. 1950s stylization. After Fantasia, Mickey appeared less frequently in theatrical shorts, but the 1950s brought notable adjustments to his design. In Pluto's Party, 1952, and other shorts of the decade, Mickey was given a more angular and stylized look. His head took on a stronger pear shape, and his body proportions became sharper, aligning with the mid-century animation style that favored cleaner lines and simpler forms. Another shift during this period was Mickey's clothing. For the first time, he occasionally appeared in ordinary outfits instead of his traditional shorts and gloves. This was partly a reflection of the 1950s cultural atmosphere, where animation often leaned toward domestic and everyday themes. However, many found the effect unusual, since audiences had long associated Mickey with his classic uniform. Despite these experiments, his personality was softened further, emphasizing wholesome traits over mischievous behavior. This version of Mickey was also immortalized in branding. His stylized face became the emblem of the Mickey Mouse Club television show, which launched in 1955. This logo version of Mickey, with its angular head and eyebrows for extra expression, became one of the most recognizable symbols of the era, cementing his presence in television culture even as his theatrical shorts were winding down. End of classic shorts. By the early 1950s, Mickey's golden era of theatrical shorts was drawing to a close. His final cartoon in the original run, The Simple Things, 1953, marked the end of an era. Over the span of 130 shorts, Mickey had transformed from a mischievous trickster into a cultural role model. His visual style had also matured, far removed from the crude design of Plain Crazy. However, the cultural landscape of animation was shifting. By the 1950s, audiences were gravitating toward new characters like Donald Duck, Goofy, and Pluto, who often carried stronger comedic appeal. Mickey, with his increasingly perfected image, was sometimes considered too wholesome to generate the kind of conflict needed for slapstick comedy. As a result, he appeared less frequently in leading roles. Even though he was fading from theatrical screens, Mickey's influence did not disappear. His image became the face of Disneyland, which opened in 1955, and his character served more as a corporate ambassador than as a constant on-screen performer. This transition reflected his evolution from a cartoon star into a cultural symbol, one whose identity reached beyond the medium of animation itself. Television era. Though his theatrical presence diminished, Mickey Mouse found renewed life through television. The debut of the Mickey Mouse Club in 1955 brought him to an entirely new generation of viewers. The show's opening logo, Mickey's stylized 1950s face with bold eyebrows, became iconic, representing both the character and the larger Disney brand. During this era, Mickey was less about constant reinvention and more about stability. His design was standardized, often reverting to Fred Moore's 1939-inspired model with slight 1950s adjustments. In print, theme parks, and merchandise, this image of Mickey was repeated so consistently that it solidified him as a timeless character. On television, Mickey functioned less as a mischievous figure and more as a wholesome host, embodying the idealized American family values of the post-war period. His presence reassured parents and delighted children, keeping him relevant even without the release of new shorts. This era effectively locked in Mickey's identity as a safe, charming, and endlessly marketable figure, qualities that would carry him into the modern age. 1980s Revival. After decades of limited on-screen presence, Mickey Mouse made a triumphant return in the 1980s. The short film Mickey's Christmas Carol, 1983, was the first theatrical Mickey cartoon in 30 years and introduced him to a new generation. This version of Mickey deliberately returned to Fred Moore's 1940s design: rounder proportions, expressive white eyes with pupils, and a warm, approachable appearance. Audiences embraced the return. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Mickey appeared in other projects such as The Prince and the Pauper, 1990, and Runaway Brain, 1995. Each time, animators reinforced the Fred Moore-inspired look, cementing it as the standard model for modern Mickey. These revivals reminded audiences that Mickey was not just a brand mascot, but a living character who could still star in meaningful stories. During this period, his role shifted once again. Instead of anarchic troublemaker or silent observer, Mickey embodied stability and tradition. His return coincided with Disney's broader renaissance, linking his image with the company's renewed cultural dominance. 3D transformation. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, advances in computer animation brought Mickey into 3 dimensions. Series like Mickey Mouse Works and House of Mouse maintained his traditional 2D form, but were soon followed by fully 3D projects, such as Mickey's Twice, Upon a Christmas, 2004, and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, 2006. These productions adapted the Fred Moore design into 3-dimensional models, preserving his familiar round head, oval buttons, red shorts, yellow shoes, and gloves. While some fans found the digital style less charming, it ensured that Mickey could remain relevant in the age of CGI animation. For many younger viewers, this 3D Mickey became their primary introduction to the character. Despite the new medium, Mickey's role remained consistent. He served as a cheerful, wholesome figure, leading stories with positivity and kindness. His evolution here was less about changing his personality, and more about ensuring his design adapted smoothly to new technologies and viewing platforms. Modern throwbacks. In 2013, Mickey's evolution came full circle. The theatrical short Get a Horse reintroduced him in a style directly inspired by his 1920s pie-eye design. The short cleverly blended black and white 2D animation with modern 3D, even using archival recordings of Walt Disney's voice for Mickey's dialogue. This fusion honored his origins while showcasing modern animation techniques. Shortly after, Disney launched a new wave of stylized Mickey Mouse shorts for television and the web. These cartoons, beginning in 2013, deliberately embraced the loose, exaggerated design of 1929 Mickey with rubber hose limbs and bold, simplified shapes. Though highly modern in execution, the look evoked nostalgia, reminding audiences of Mickey's earliest appearances. This return to a vintage style demonstrated the flexibility of Mickey's identity. After more than 90 years, he could embody both the slick, polished figure of the mid-20th century and the anarchic, playful energy of his beginnings. Today, Mickey Mouse exists in multiple forms simultaneously: as a 3D figure in theme parks, as a classic pie-eye cartoon star in stylized shorts, and as the polished Fred Moore design across global branding. What ties them all together is the clear through line of his evolution, from crude trickster to timeless cultural icon. I'm going to keep dropping more of these cartoon breakdowns, so if that's your thing, stick around. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for being here, and catch you next time.